Today we're breaking down a 20 Pit of Sauron. This was actually done last week at the time of this video getting posted, but I did think this run was pretty good, and it was my kind of first time getting into the Master of Harmony build, and so it was kind of cool to see how that performed. So we are going to be running kind of a pretty fizz-based comp outside of the fact that we are playing Unholy Death Knight, but they are filling in for our typical rogue or hunter. But we are sporting the Arms Warrior and the Feral Druid. So let's get into it. Starting off the first pull, we are going to be making sure we are targeting this first Shadebringer caster and making sure we get a kick so we can move it onto the Lich. And now we are focusing the Lich down since this is probably the Prio mob. You can make the argument that the Shadebringer is also the Prio mob or the Tormentor, but this is going to be an explosive start to the pull. Playing Master of Harmony, our overall burst damage in these larger pulls is going to be relatively small, but it's going to shine in the lower pull counts as well as the boss encounters. So using Black Ox at the start isn't necessarily a massive damage gain. As you can see, I only really peaked around 320 KDPS, but still sustaining a solid 270. The goal here after the Lich dies is to finish off any remaining casters, and then we are going to be finishing off the Graveblade at the very end of this pull. Now, our Shaman is staying back just a little bit to make sure he is grabbing the Quarry Camp, and then, unfortunately, a DK pet at this moment actually runs back and pulls another pack here. So things are about to get a little spicy. As you can see, some of the pings are coming out. These other tormentors and casters came in. I see the caster up at the top of the hill, and for now, I just decide to paralysis it to leave it at combat until we have things a little bit more under control. In this pull, we are mostly trying to kill the Gargoyle and the Shadebringer. Those are the two things that are going to prevent us from moving on to the next pull. Now, normally I would grab another pack of Enforcers here that are guarding the second Quarry Camp, but because of this little extra pull fiasco, we are just gonna do what we can here. Now, I have been holding Fortifying Brew. This pull without Enforcers isn't all that dangerous, and this Master of Harmony build is crazy tanky. Anyways, Healer is in CC, so I'm going to deploy my Tiger's Lust on him, making sure that root is removed. Most characters in our, or most players in our composition can remove that root themselves, including the Warrior and the Druid, but the Shaman and the DK are going to need my help with Tiger's Lust if they get grabbed by the Gargoyle. The general idea for playing Master of Harmony is actually pretty simple. Your rotation becomes very, very basic. It is Keg Smash into Breath of Fire, into Blackout Kick, into Tiger Palm. Your Breath of Fires with that rotation should always be amped by 15%, giving you more burst healing with Vital Flame and a little bit more damage on that Dragonfire Brew / Breath of Fire cast. Then Keg Smash is obviously the catalyst for proccing or resetting your Breath of Fire, and then Blackout combo with the amped talents like Meditative Focus, Blackout combo, Facepalm, and Counterstrike makes our Tiger Palm do very high damage, and the Tiger Palm is dispelling off those Harmonic Surge stacks, dealing high damage to the targets we're facing. So I eventually did pull these Enforcers in. They are eventually going to go down. Again, this pull, a little bit of a fiasco. Actually, this entire dungeon run, now that I'm thinking back on it, was not necessarily the cleanest. So we had that extra pack get pulled, and we're about to have another extra pack get pulled. So I was not in comms for this run. So in my head, I was thinking okay, we pulled extra. I'm going to just try to skip around this. So I end up pulling the Plague Horror, but then my group decides, well, not decides, they were kind of blocked. So in order to get to me, they were like, you know what, we're just going to pull something and he'll get threat on it. And then they ended up pulling both the Lich and the Necrolite. So this pull went from super chill to I was thinking we were going to brick the key right here. The main reason I was thinking that we were going to brick the key is because this is generally a pull that Brewmasters, I shouldn't say struggle with, but this is normally a pretty dangerous pull, especially if you have a Lich in here. So adding the Necrolite on top of everything else made me think that I might die. But luckily, Ox just faded. I commit Fortifying Brew, and we are going to make sure that we are focusing the Gargoyle down, followed by the Lich. Now, keep in mind, the Lich is not scary until it hits 50% health, where then it will start pulsating damage. Now, as you can see, I'm a little confused here on where to go. Because we had extra stuff come in, I was just thrown off just a little bit. The Lich is just now hitting 50% health, so prioing some of the other mobs actually allowed us to recover this pull. Again, I wasn't in comms. I'm sure they probably said something like, let's target something that's not the Lich to make sure that we don't take that extra AoE damage. Now the pull's getting a little bit scary. Link gets committed, though I was actually I was tending to be pretty healthy here. I know it looked scary for just a second, but the beauty of Master of Harmony is that you do way more self-healing. The main reason for this is because our Gaiplin's Imperial Brew, in combination with Mantra of Purity, allows us to have additional healing. Mantra of Purity cleanses 60% of stagger instead of 50%, which benefits Gaiplin's healing. So the Graveblade is the final thing to die here. Not a very scary mob by itself. And then our Shaman is hanging back to make sure he liberates the third quarry camp here. Now, I probably could have skipped this pack. I'm going to set focus to the Cadaver because that's the thing that I'm going to be kicking. We're going to be grabbing the Graveblade, and then I'm going to be going just a little bit further, grabbing in one extra Tormentor and a Gargoyle, ceasing out that Shadebringer for the time being. Now, there's normally 2 Enforcers that we end up pulling here. I decided not to pull them, hoping to save us a little bit of count because with the extra mobs that we have pulled, we are probably going to end up close to, if not well over 100%, which we'll see later. And I don't really want to change the route much elsewhere. Now, this is a pretty scary pull for the tank because the Graveblade makes you take more frost damage and the Proto Drake does frost damage on their auto attacks. So you do need to be a little cautious when you are facing off against that combination of enemies. Healer's in CC, and I'm going to land that Tiger's Lust on him to make sure he gets out. And then we are focusing the Shadebringer. The Shadebringer is the contingency on which we can chain or not chain. So once the Shadebringer gets low, I'm going to be able to head off into the next pull. My general rule of thumb for this dungeon, whenever I can, is to minimize the amount of casters we have in the pull to 1. So I'm going to be running ahead, grabbing some of these Leaping Geists, pulling back to the caster, and trying to finish it off. Now, when you're playing Master of Harmony, generally you're kind of sticking to a 4-sequence rotation, and you will be wanting to cast Chi Burst often. You want to stick to kind of the 30-second interval whenever it comes off of cooldown, but just in case you cannot do that, it's okay to sit on it just for a little bit, but casting Chi Burst on CD is going to give you that little bit of extra damage. If you find that you're not hitting Chi Burst on cooldown or at all, you're just better off playing Chi Wave. Once we get to this pull, at this point, normally the rest of the pulls in this dungeon are going to be very tame until after the second boss. So I'll obviously talk about what I do up there, but these pulls are now going to be pretty chill. It's mostly on our group, our DPS, and our healer to play well. Now, once this pack dies, we'll be able to liberate this 4th quarry camp here. So the Enforcer finally goes down. Our healer Chicken is going to click on that, and now we are getting ready to go. So this is probably the first time we're getting like an actual combat break in the dungeon. And now this next pull is going to be relatively large. I'm going to try to get the Gargoyle in nice and early. I'm going to be kicking the Shadebringer and dragging everything over to this Proto Drake, and then using Ring of Peace to knock this mob a little bit closer so the casters are stacked. Facing the Proto Drake away to try to bait the frontal away from the group if possible. And then we are watching out for the Tiger's Lust on our DK. Now, unfortunately, I accidentally Tiger's Lusted a second early before I was able to get the mouse over, so he is going to end up getting dragged up all the way into the air and then dropped and stunned. So unfortunately, we do have to commit Link here. I sweep on the double cast just so no one goes down there, and that was a little bit of an oopsie on my part. I should have been better about making sure I landed that Tiger's Lust. When you have a single Gargoyle, you should be able to Tiger's Lust every single time. That was just obviously me making a mistake. I believe throughout this key, I was actually on a conference call. So I wasn't in comms. I was like half paying attention. So this is actually a pretty good run, given the fact that I kind of was like not fully locked in. Once the casters go down, we're going to be left with just like the Graveblade, and his Proto Drake's also dying here. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to come over here and grab this Necrolite. Now, there are 2 mobs over to my left. I generally do grab those, except this time I'm not because, again, we're over percent just by a little bit. So I paralysis out the Necrolite. We're pulling in all of the mobs that have 1 health that cannot die until the Necrolite dies, and we are utilizing this for funnel. Now, Arms Warrior gets a little bit of funnel. Feral Druid also gets a little bit of funnel. I don't know about DK, but this is going to allow us to have a little bit faster boss kill time. By ceasing out the Necrolite, these mobs will just literally never die. So we always have 5 targets. Now, obviously, it's not like efficient damage because it's essentially going into nothing. But when you're able to like generate more single target damage off of having additional targets in the pull, it generally yields just better results. And so we're going to keep this Necrolite CC'd for just a little bit of time, and then we are eventually going to allow it to come back into the pull so we can kill it off before the boss goes down, so we aren't wasting time like just attacking 1 pack. So here it comes. I'm going to CC, and I'm then going to ring it back out here in a second, just so we don't accidentally cleave it for any reason. And then once the paralysis expires in about 50 seconds, I'm going to let it just come back in and we're going to just finish it off. Now, doing this strategy, it's not complicated. You just have to make sure you're kicking the cadaver. It's not hard. There's never like any scary overlap. But just making sure it is locked down roughly every like 20 seconds or so is the name of the game. Now it is nice because we do get a little bit of damage reduction from kicking it for our shaman. I believe he gets damage reduction whenever he kicks. I don't actually remember if it's based on school or what, but now that we've kind of had really two bad rock or serenite chunk positionings, I'm gonna now move him over to the other forge so we have more room to play with. I didn't like how we did the first two. I was a little disappointed, but again, wasn't in comms, couldn't really say anything. And my world cycle macro add-on broke, so I can't like quickly put down macro or not macros, world markers to showcase that. Anyways, Necrolite, the CC breaks, it finally comes in. The boss is a little high, but I didn't want to have to like re-CC and then have to go out and break it in about 20 seconds, so we decided to just kill it a little bit earlier than we normally do. Link gets committed, Stomp comes out. We are now trying to move closer to the forge. Probably not the best movement for my group, but again, I think our Serenite chunk placement on this encounter was just kind of like subpar. So yeah. Anyways, these two chunks come out. I'm gonna just break the one that's next to this like anvil, and then we will be heading back towards the other forge here after this set. In terms of cooldowns, Fortifying Brew, don't really need to use it. I can use it for like a free reset, but when you're playing Master of Harmony, you don't need to like use your off or your cooldowns like offensively in almost any situation. You can kind of just hold unless you're in danger. I should be chi bursting a little bit more, but I find that you probably get more just pure single target damage if you're just like tiger palming. So I'm sticking to the main core rotation here. So that pack finally goes down. The last set of ore chunks do come out here. We are kind of split. We're like right in the middle of the room. So I'm going to do my best to actually break the one on the right side of the room. I'm kind of turned around and then we're going to move him a little bit closer. Now it doesn't really matter because I think we'll kill beforehand, but he's now positioned where we can stand right behind the rock on this side and we should be good to go. Once he goes down, we're just looking to mount up and head out. I think a slight optimization is we could probably end up at the entrance / exit of the room so we don't have to run as far. But this pull's going to be pretty tame. We're going to be grabbing just the Lich along with the Cold Wraith, and I'm going to be running a little bit further to grab a Tormentor. We have to be a little careful on threat there, as you saw someone potentially almost ripped there. It's not the end of the world. Keg Smash, when you're playing Master of Harmony, doesn't have as much of like a kick to it, so it's not going to do as much damage. Therefore, you're not going to be generating as much threat with just that ability. You need to, Keg, then Breath, and then Blackout, and then Tiger, and like that sequence should be plenty. You can see here, like I did use Black Ox, but even in 6 targets, I'm doing like pretty competitive DPS. This is where the Master of Harmony build really shines, is in this lower target count kind of pull. So for the rest of the dungeon, when our pulls are a little bit smaller like this, we're just going to be doing a ton of damage. That pack goes down. Our shaman is hanging back to make sure we're getting that thing. I do want to make this pull bigger in the future, but for now, we are just grabbing this Proto Drake and Graveblade and pulling it into this Necrolite and Cold Wraith pull. I'm going to be marking the Cold Wraith. I believe someone else should be watching the Cadaver. I actually changed my mark to it, but it looks like our DK was looking at it, and now we are focusing down the Proto Drake. The priority in this pull actually would be the Cold Wraith, though. But I don't think we're going to focus it. Because as soon as we kill one Cold Wraith, I can drag it onto the next Cold Wraith that's a little bit further. And this final Quarry Camp number 6, we are actually going to come back to after the fact. So we're going to start actually walking this to the next area. There's a little bit of RP, there's a little bit of downtime after the boss fight anyways, that running over here and getting it allows your tank to get to the top of the hill to make gathering a little bit easier. So here we are, we're landing those kicks on that Cold Wraith, and I'm going to start running over here. I do use a spin just to get some initial threat because I didn't feel like my Keg Smash was going to hit that gargoyle, and I wanted to wait till it was actually in the pole, and then we're going to be targeting the next. Actually, I think we go Graveblade here, but making sure that we're kicking the Cold Wraith is probably a pretty good idea. When you're playing with an Arms Warrior, the name of the game is get as much trash on the boss as possible. Unfortunately, I'm targeting the Cadaver here, which is real bad. I definitely need to improve on that. You do not want to be targeting those mobs that technically don't take damage, and you want to be targeting the priority mob that does. So in this case, it should be the Cold Wraith, because that and the Gargoyle will prevent us from going on a boss. I don't care about the Graveblade, but the Gargoyle and Cold Wraith definitely are what is preventing us from moving on right now. And now I'm going to be pulling these final ghouls. These ghouls we're going to be pulling on a boss. Now, it can be a little scary, so you have to be on top of your kicks for this dungeon. This boss is a little sleeper. I think in lower keys, you just build a bad habit of just letting everything happen to your group, and your healer just like muscles through it. But when you get into higher keys, this boss gets really scary if you miss kicks, and there's 3 kicks you have to manage. So pulling on a boss, the boss will instantly split into 3 targets. 2 of them will be shades, 1 of them will be the real boss. Normally, it's my goal to kick one of the ads immediately, and then our shaman dispels the other kind of shadow bind. Then the next one of our melee kicks, and then I can Tiger's Lust off one of the shades as well. Now we're hoping to kill one of the shades before the second or the third soulbind starts. If not, we just send another kick. I'm going to deploy Touch of Death here to kill that shade, and now we're going to let that we let that Death Bolt go off to get the spell reflect on our warrior. So having that communication is also really important. But as you can see, you can like look at our damage and we're just like blasting. Obviously, we're padding a little bit because of the ads, but we are gaining a little bit of extra single target damage because of our warrior having extra targets to hit. And then at this point, it's just a rinse and repeat. So now the boss is going to fixate. The fight did get a lot easier because there is no longer any leaping geists leaping around onto different targets. And we're going to just be kind of vibing here. As I'm looking at this, I feel like I should be casting Chi Burst a little bit more. I did just cast it there, but I feel like I'm always sitting on it for like 5 to 10 seconds, if not more, which means that I'm definitely missing out on some uses of Chi Burst. The unique thing about Master of Harmony is that you play a talent or you have a talent in your hero talent tree that just makes it do 100% more damage. So Chi Burst ends up actually becoming a pretty sizable damaging ability. Link gets committed. There is a close shade, so I'm going to get an immediate kick. We're going to get a dispel from our shaman on the player who is being targeted. And then on this smash, I'm going to try to move away from the shade so we don't clutter up melee too much. We did get a second kick. Here's the third kick coming out. Carrot ends up landing the kick here. The ad goes down, and then we're going to transfer over to the next shade. Now, this set is dying way slower than our last sets. That's typical. It's not a big deal. And once this ad goes down, we'll move back over to the boss. There isn't really a rush. It's just annoying, especially as a full melee comp, to constantly get these kicks. It's on accident, so we are going to kick pretty much right away. And what we're doing is we're kind of praying that it goes on Karad more often because he can always spell reflect for really big damage. Chances are we're going to have to see one more set of this mechanic, but it's not a big deal. So Chi Burst gets deployed, a little bit of damage. Lumbering Fixation comes out. This will never target the tank, so you're free to pretty much just do damage. The one thing I will say about this phase, though, is it does tend to not deal a ton of damage to the tank. So if you want to continue purifying and fishing for your Apex talent resets, you want to actually stand in the green poop on the ground. You'll see me do that here in just a second. I'm going to move into the poop to try to get some stagger built up so I can actually purify. So you'll see now that I'm standing it that the stagger is starting to tick up. Also, love Blizzard nameplates when they disappear like that. So close shade, I'm going to kick immediately. Shaman dispels our, himself there because he was being targeted. I'm going to run the Tank Buster out last second, so I'm not polluting up melee. We're going to deploy the Touch of Death, maybe, and then we're going to move over to the other shade. So my kick is coming up right now. I was able to kick that. The Soulbind, while it should be interrupted, it can also be decursed, I believe, and it can also be shape-shifted out of, or any kind of snare removal. So Tiger's Lust works, shape-shifting works, Fearless works for Warrior. You can also pre-AMS to, if it goes on you, it just cancels immediately. And now we are in the final, I guess the third second phase, or the intermission, whatever you want to call it. They're about to kind of connect again, but we are going to dispatch this boss here in any second. So we're looking at an 1858 split there. Really good, or 1857. Our shaman is actually already heading over to get that RP started. I'm going to be able to start setting up this next pull. And because he's clicking on that quarry camp a little bit late, I'm actually able to kick this Cold Wraith a little bit early, and it's going to be higher up the hill than having it run down. It's a slight optimization. I do have to be careful, though, because I don't have a healer here, and we're going to be heading all the way into this next pull where I'm going to be deploying a quick kick on the Shadebringer, and we are now focusing casters. This is a very scary pull for tanks. Now, the dangerous part isn't the first Graveblade, but it's the second Graveblade, because the first Graveblade does a lot of physical damage, and it makes you take 100% more frost damage. But the Graveblade's hit actually does a split version of the damage. So it does physical and frost, then makes you take more frost. So the second Graveblade hit actually is going to deal uh, a lot of damage. So basically, the idea is you want to use your defensive right before the first one comes out because they're desynced. They're never going to hit you at the same time. So I normally start off by using my Black Ox. Once Black Ox fades, the second Frostbane slashes, I use Fortifying Brew, and then the third set of these four Frostbane slashes, I tend to find God. That's either through a trinket, healer, link, or just like Celestial Infusion, maybe with a leg sweep, so there's no other damage going on, so I can be nice and healthy. Making sure I'm using something like Expel Harm to top myself, and we're going to finish off that Graveblade. Now, this final Graveblade, I am going to dangerously chain this into the next pull. I'm hoping that we kill this guy before the next Frostbane Slash, but I think it ends up going off. Not a big deal. I just need to be aware that it's happening so I can play defensive. I can commit like a Ring of Peace. I can make sure I'm topping myself, or my healer is aware that I need to be really healthy. Now, luckily, we were able to kill it beforehand, but again, double Graveblade is always going to be crazy dangerous. Now, we've tried heading forward and like pulling the next pack back onto this. Do not recommend. Kill Geists before the Lich actually hits 50%. If not, this phase kind of gets a little scary. I end up just standing in that swirl. I don't even remember standing in that swirl, if I'm being honest. I think what was happening is at this point in the dungeon, my conference call just ended. So I was actually clicking on my other monitor to like leave the call so I could jump into Discord with the guys because I think I jump in just about like around this time. So that's so funny. I didn't even realize I got hit by that swirl. So running the Graveblade all the way up, again, pulling these Geists onto the mini boss at this point is actually also really, really dangerous. So we're going to actually get most of these packs down, and then we're going to handle the mini boss by itself. But we have so much time. We have 9 minutes, basically, 8.5 minutes to get through just this last little remaining bit of trash, and then obviously onto the boss. Now, as you can tell, we are at 95% trash. The Graveblade is just going down, and we're at 97. This pull is worth about 3%, if not, I think it's a little bit more. So this last mini boss we're going to have to face off against is literally just like, it doesn't, the only thing it's preventing us from doing is attacking the boss, but we don't need it for percent. So the Geists are finally starting to go down. Again, once the shield starts and these Geists are still up, we're probably going to take a lot of damage or perish. So we are trying to get them down beforehand, which luckily it looks like we're going to. But as you can see, we are at 100% count already, and this guy is worth a fair bit. So definitely room for improvement here. I believe we're just about on a timeable pace for 21. So I hope that when we clean it up a little bit, we'll get a little bit more item level. We come back in here. Yeah, I'm hoping that we can get a 21 in the next couple weeks. Now, my group is taking a little bit of a break because of Diablo 4. They're all looking forward to it. We'll probably still play, but we've definitely not been really pushing that aggressively over the last few weeks, hence why I haven't been posting a ton of commentaries. So hoping when we do get back into it, I can start posting a lot more of these. I have a bunch of 20s stockpiled, so I'm probably going to do those commentaries over the next couple, like over the next week or so you guys can see what's going on in these 20 keys. But almost every single 20 at this point, I've been running exclusively Master of Harmony. It's felt so good, and I think my overall ends up being higher on average, but Shado-pan is still really competitive. I think at the end of this key, though, I think I finished this key at my highest overall ever playing this build, which is just so fun. The whole idea is that you're not playing Exploding Keg and you're putting that point into Anvil and Stave to fish for a couple extra like Purifying Brew resets, which also allows you to heal for more. And you're just kind of putting a lot of your stock into just your four button rotation. I find Exploding Keg to be a little clunky now with Master of Harmony. The reset doesn't matter all that much, and the DR slash like 100% reduction that it gives you for auto attacks doesn't also really matter. So, all right, so we are heading into Scourge Lord Tyranny. So this boss, you can get kind of RNG diffed on. So in an ideal circumstance, we would have this go on 1 range and 1 melee every time. But unfortunately, it went on our 2 range DPS. And what I mean by that is our Shaman is obviously ranged because he's a healer, and our DK is ranged because he can do like 90% of his damage from a distance. Our melee would be Axton and Carrot. So unfortunately, the first set went on the people who can do damage from range, which means that we're going to always lose uptime every time the second set of circles come out. Now, some people haven't recognized this, or they don't. Maybe you don't know this, but these circles will, once the pattern is figured out at the start of the fight, it'll always be the same. So at the start of every like phase one, it'll be Chicken and Zuzu, our Decan or Shaman, and then the second set will always be Axton then Carrot for this run. So you can get a little RNG diff, but it is consistent. So it should allow your defensives to line up. I think it can only change if someone like perishes, like someone dies. We end up committing Lust to this first burn, so this Plague Spreader is going to go down really quickly. Your goal for this ad is to kill it before, ideally as sooner than the next Bone Infusion comes out, which is in 10 seconds. Now, this first ad died incredibly fast. We had, I think, a lot of our cooldowns up. We had Lust rolling, and so we just blew that pack up. So Lust is going to be fading in about 10 seconds. Bone Infusion is coming out, and I believe that this set is just Raw Dog Healing, where the next set, I believe Shaman drops Link. Anyways, unfortunately, I was kind of like not paying attention super much, but I will shift over now. Luckily, or not luckily, it's on 2 of our range, so I didn't have to be too close. I'm then going to get knocked to the other bone piles here, and then I'm going to position right on top of one, so one of our melee can continue doing damage while the next set of Rhyme Blasts come out. We're dodging boat or Death's Grasp. Death's Grasp, if you get clipped by it as a tank, you're super fine. Just Tiger's List yourself, and you'll be vibing. So I believe Carrot comms that he's going to run out here. So Axton stays in. We get a Heroic Leap out, and then he's going to ideally charge immediately. And yeah, that's it. I got knocked the wrong way here. Again, I was kind of like, I don't know why. I just like wasn't paying attention on this fight because I knew that this was like a good run for us and it was looking really good. But I think I was kind of just like zoned out because I was like, oh, this is like I don't know. We could wipe here, but I don't think we will. And so I was just kind of in a relaxed state. Big Rake gets deployed onto the Plague Spreader, and then we are going to make sure that we are kicking. If it is on Carrot, we could let it go off for Spell Reflect. Ad's going to go down. I didn't even have to commit Touch of Death there, and now we are in the final phase of this boss. The general goal is to make sure that this guy dies before his next ad set. So Bone Infusion is going to be coming out. Boss will be just about 20% health, and we are going to be looking to execute him here shortly. So I'm just taking a count of where these piles are. Again, it is on Zuzu and our healer Chicken. So I give one of them Tiger's Lust. I give it to Chicken so he can get out nice and far. I'm going to get knocked in the direction of the other bone pile so our melee can position properly. And now we have made an audible to just tunnel. Now, unfortunately, we took that audible a little too seriously. When you do tunnel this fight, you still want to CC these bone piles with the Rhyme Blast. If you don't do that, if these ads happen to spawn, we'd probably just wipe. So Axton's going to 1. Carrot is just tunneling. You know, he was committed. But on this next ad set, it could be a little dangerous. Unfortunately, I missed the Touch of Death. He leapt right as I got in melee range, and we go for the kill. So we finished that run with 2 minutes and 29 seconds left. This was towards the end of last week. So a couple of days ago at this point, but pretty good run, pretty proud of it. I know Pit of Saron is an easier dungeon, but I thought this run was relatively impressive. So Master of Harmony finished at 116k overall. This is one of my highest overalls ever. Again, the highest highs aren't going to be as nearly as impressive as Shado-pan, but Master of Harmony can really hold its own as soon as you start to have longer pulls and smaller pulls, which there are a couple of pulls in here. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed the breakdown. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.